Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our Cabinet this afternoon. Can I welcome anybody at home who's looking in? Can I just ask Cabinet to introduce themselves? Firstly, I'm Peter Fox, Leader of the Council.
Phil Murphy, Cabinet Member for Resources.
Good afternoon, County Councillor Liz Hackett-Payne, Cabinet Member for Education.
Hello, County Councillor Brian Jones, Cabinet Member for County Operations.
Bob Greenland, Deputy Leader, responsibilities for enterprise, leisure and culture.
Phil Hobson, Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member for Community Development.
Jeff Burrows, Cabinet Member for Social Care, Safeguarding and Health.
Thank you. Could opposition leaders introduce themselves? I note that Roger's here in replace of Councillor Petruni, but please, Roger.
County Councillor Roger Harris, standing in for the Leader of the Labour Group.
Good afternoon, Cabinet, Senior Officers. Simon Howarth, Leader of the Independent Group. And may I wish Cabinet a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and that applies to everybody within Monmouthshire. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Simon. Okay, so, and we're obviously joined by a lot of officers. Please, officers, if you join the debate, could you introduce yourselves? Just to note that Councillor Tony Eason has asked in advance to speak today to item 4.1, and so Tony will be invited in after Cabinet. Okay, so apologies for absence formally. It's just Dimitri Petruni today. And we go on to declarations of interest. Anybody wish to raise one at this point? That goes for any members who may be with us in the chamber. No? Okay, if you find one, as usual, can you please let us know verbally and also fill in the usual pro forma. Item 3 then, that's the consideration of reports from Select Committee, none at forward today. And so we go straight into the main of the agenda. And that is item 4, and the first point is the section 106 funding, 3G pitch and Caldecott Castle play area upgrading. So I'll introduce this briefly, and we please Mike Moran's with us today, and I know Tony is going to raise some local points on this as well. The report is to seek our approval to utilise the Section 106 balance held by the Council from the Taylor Wimpey development site in Church Road, Caldecott, and to revise the approval previously agreed in respect of the Caldecott Castle and Castrogi play areas. You'll note in key issues there that in April 2016, earlier this year, we had agreed that the remaining money from the Taylor Wimpey development site would be utilised to carry out that upgrading of both Caldecott Castle play area and Castrogi. However, there were additional pressures which have come along through the works we were doing on 3G, on the 3G pitch, which are identified there in 3.1. Leisure Centre electrical supply, the increasing of the fence for the reasons laid out there, and other maintenance issues which have been picked up by the Leisure Centre, requiring an element of money then to supplement that 3G project, which has left us in the situation where we are today. The recommendations that we have before us are that we recommend to increase the 3G capital programme by the £26,335, which is built through those items listed in 3.1, as I just alluded to, and then we also need to look at the 26,335 of the Church Road Section 106 balance being used to offset that work, and that 63,500 of the Church Road Section 106 balance be used to completely upgrade the children's play area at Caldecott Castle. It's currently not in use, I believe. And that then the upgrading of the children's play area at Castrogi, or sometimes known as Hall Park, will be delayed pending the wider consideration of play areas. And obviously, we will be seeking assurances that next tranches of 106 or available resources will be aligned to those areas. So pretty straightforward report, but I know that Councillor Easton has some local issues he'd like to raise, and I'll ask Mike then to address some of those if need be. So first of all, though, can I invite Cabinet if they have anything to offer at this point? Nothing to offer?
I'd like to hear what Mike Moran and the local member
okay.
has to say.
So, Tony, can I invite you to give us your feedback?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I bring these comments to Cabinet on the basis of my involvement in the project board some many years ago on the ASDA development, and part of the ASDA development and the 3G pitch, it was intended not to have an ATP pitch. As Councillor Green is fully aware, we had the map of how we were going to reconfigure the pitches. Subsequent to that, a decision was taken, I believe, within education that there was a need to keep the ATP pitch. As a consequence, it changed the concept of how the residue of monies from 106 money, the AS development, was going to be put towards those pitches. It's been a bit of an ongoing concern of Monmouthshire County Council, as much as with 2 pitches, you needed to upgrade electrical supply, because what we planned on project board was 1 pitch with 1 electrical supply. So we've got that particular situation now. I'm rather concerned that that money for Hall Park, Castroggy pitch, or what do you want to call it, which is boundary my ward and Councillor Watts' ward, which is in need of repair, that it should be put on the back burner at this time, because Caldicot Town Council did in April, I think, of this year, agree fully with the need to upgrade the Caldicot Castle Park, because it was in a bad state of repair. Mind you, it hasn't been there that long. It's been there only half as long as the Hall Park one. And there were some concerns that I felt that I had to emphasise that I'm not really happy with losing the £26,000 for the Hall Park Play Park, although I am aware that we need to do some work on the ATP pitch and the 3G pitch. So really, I won't kill it, because I have spoken to you privately. You've had my email at the beginning of the week, and hopefully we'll have some views of Mr. Moran and yourselves and Cabinet as the way forward on sorting out the 26 grand for the Hall Park. So I won't kill it any more than that's where I stand.
Thanks very much, Tony. I've also spoken with the Mayor and other Caldicot Town Council members who share some of your concerns. However, none of them want to hold up this report, recognising we need the work doing at Caldicot Castle Play area as a matter of importance. But it's a fair challenge on the what would be recommendation 2.4. So I think we need to seek some assurance, and as a cabinet, I think we can give the assurance that when appropriate money becomes available, that clearly Hall Park has a priority toward that money, because it's already been recognised there was a need. But perhaps I'll invite Mike to reflect a little bit further on the situation in Caldicot, and how we perhaps got to the situation where we had to utilise the other utilise that other monies. Is that the right avenue to use to find the 26,000, or should we have considered another avenue? So Mike, perhaps you can give us your perspective.
Yes, excuse me. Yes, Leader, I'll try and do that. I think, first of all, just to confirm what Councillor Easton has said, when we did go ahead with the new pitch at Caldicot, initially it was intended that the new 3G pitch would replace the ATP pitch, the artificial turf pitch, but partway through the negotiations with the school, it became clear that the school couldn't do without a hockey pitch, because that formed a very big proportion of the female PE provision on the site. So we did come back to you and to Cabinet, and they did agree to increase the budget for retaining the ATP and also building a 3G pitch. And then we had to come back to you a second time, because when we started work proper on the 3G pitch, there were a lot of additional costs that were previously unforeseen. There was a lot of flooding on the site. There was a particular groundwork problem that affected both the ATP pitch, the 3G pitch, and indeed the new ASDA development. The ASDA car park on the new site needed quite a bit of extra work doing on the drainage there. So We thought that we'd completed all the work on the 3G pitch, but unfortunately these extra costs came along. We proceeded to do the works from within what we understood to be the budget, but unfortunately it has resulted in an overspend on the 3G pitch, which now needs to be regularised, and therefore it's a recommendation in this report to go to council on that to get approval for the additional expenditure, effectively increasing the cost of that capital project, because obviously Cabinet can't make that decision having approved the current capital budget in this financial year. So essentially what it means is there's a smaller balance now available from the Taylor Wimpey site, and that works out at about £65,000 instead of what we thought at the time was about £92,000. And what this report is recommending is that we go ahead with the Castle play area as a matter of urgency, because the majority of the equipment has been condemned there, and we've had to close that play area now to the public. What we'd like to do is to get the play area up and running as close to the beginning of the new visitor season as we can. And there's a 3-month delivery period on the equipment we want to use on that site, so the longer we delay making a decision, the longer delay there will be in actually installing the play area. Which then leaves us short, as the report says, on funding to spend at Hall Park or Castroge. And what we're suggesting on that, I've got to be clear, Leader, there aren't any absolute guarantees, but there is an opportunity for potentially some other Section 106 funding to come to the Council in the next couple of years from another relatively small development in Caldicot. And as members will know now, we have to specify in the 106 agreements where that funding should be spent, and we're recommending that we designate Hall Park as the recipient of that funding to upgrade that when that funding does come into the council. So we're hoping that the work will be done, it's just that it will be done in a slightly longer term.
Thanks, Mike. That's really clear, and I've got assurances from local members that whilst I don't disagree that the Castroge Park will need some refurbishment, there is no dangers with that site at the moment. It's totally usable, and so there's no immediate issue that we need to be worrying about, because we may have had to find a different way of doing this. So we're okay on that, are we?
Yes, Leader, we are okay. It's not a site that's been highlighted as having to be removed or particularly dangerous, but as Councillor Easton has said, it is an old play area. The fact is we have a lot of old play areas across Monmouthshire, and this is one of them. So it is in desperate need of some work doing there.
Yeah, thanks. I listened to Councillor Easton's what he had to say, and I'm aware, obviously, of the concern. But I think we have to acknowledge that there's little else that we can do other than follow the recommendations of the report. So I fully support it.
Okay, Roger?
Thank you, Leader. No, nothing to add.
Yeah, I just want to make a point of, it was said previous when the old arena was retained for the school for their activities. It's not rocket science that we have 2 arenas now, and the cost of running 2 arenas is going to be expensive. And I can't understand in the life of me how we haven't budgeted for that. And it's saying the school and leisure centre. Well, surely the school must contribute and pay the higher rate for these arenas. So my concern to Cabinet is long-term stability of these arenas. Have we got the figures for that? Because if we don't, they'll be back here. The budget for leisure services will be struggling in Caldicot, and it's important that we provide that service there. We've got the programme coming off now for the leisure centres on what we do with them, the forward programme for delivery a new model. And it's quite clear in the report that the centre there isn't sustainable. We're having these 2 arenas, and it's the people who are going to have to suffer from this. And why aren't they sustainable? I just don't get it either, and it's quite a lot of money, Leader.
Yeah, thanks, Simon. So yeah, just a point on ongoing maintenance costs and running costs, Mike.
Yes, it's a very good point, Leader. When we were planning to put the 3G pitch in, in the first instance, we sought out guidance from outside of Monmouthshire about the cost of other provisions across the country, and they varied wildly from about £10,000 per annum to maintain a 3G pitch up to as much as £22,000. What we've actually done in Caldicot is that we've got the cost down to around about £5,000 or £6,000 per annum. And the way we've done that is that the 3G pitch and the ATP pitch need regular weekly maintenance. And part of the additional expenditure referred to in this report was actually purchasing grounds maintenance equipment. We've rescheduled the rotas of the duty officers so there are no additional staff costs, and we've trained our duty officers to carry out the regular weekly maintenance. So we've reduced our annual running costs for the 3G pitch and the ATP from a minimum of £12,000 down to £6,000 per annum, and we employ a specialist company to come in twice a year to do the maintenance on both pitches. So we have made savings, but there was this initial capital cost to buy the machinery.
Okay, Kelly would like to come in, I think.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Just a quick comment to say that we do have in place now a strategic play plan. So if you'll recall, a couple of months ago, we brought to Cabinet a review of all the play areas and provision that we have in the county to ensure that we're truly strategic in terms of the areas and the interventions which we target. That plan is reviewed on an ongoing basis. So if there is an issue around duplication or perhaps too high a cost in certain areas, perhaps squeezing out others, that will be looked at as part of that strategy ongoing. And I think the other important thing to mention in this context is the review of Section 106, which is being undertaken as part of Mark Hand's portfolio at the moment as the head of planning. That review will make sure, I think, in terms of backing up the play provision strategy, which we now have in place, that we're being truly strategic and targeted in the investment decisions that we make.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. That's reassuring. Okay, then I'm going to move us to the recommendations there, and I'll just be clear then, as Mike quite rightly put out, made us aware, 2.1 that we recommend to council to increase the 3G capital budget by 26,335 to include the additional expenditure incurred by the project, and that the 26,335 of the Church Road Section 106 balance be used to offset the overspend that has occurred in carrying out those additional works at the Sevenside 3G pitch, and that 63,500 of the Church Road Section 106 balance be used to completely upgrade the children's play area at Caldicot Castle, and that the upgrading of the children's play area at Castrogi, Caldicot, be delayed pending wide consideration of play areas generally across the county. All in favour of that? Thank you very much. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Mike. Okay, I'm going to move us on then to the next report, which is the admission of Newport City Council as an additional partner to the SRS. Phil Murphy.
Yes, thank you, Leader. And this report covers that application. Of course, Newport City Council has completed and agreed a business case through its own authorisation and committee process, and has formally requested becoming a partner in the SRS, which is another milestone in the SRS journey and one to celebrate the expansion of the collaborative service model. This report seeks to invite Newport City Council to join the SRS as a partner, realising benefits for both SRS and each partner organisation. The SRS Public Board received a summary business case from Newport along with a formal request to join in September of this year, with their preferred option in the business case including essential or core ICT services only. So if it's agreed that Newport will be offered an opportunity to join the SRS as a partner, the proposed date for the commencement of this agreement would be April 17. Staff will be transferred into the SRS with Torvine County Borough Council as the host employer, which is the arrangement that currently exists with the staff there. And there's a separate paper detailing the proposal for staff transfer that has been through the SRS Public Board as well. So that board received a due diligence paper from the SRS Chief Operating Officer Matt Lewis, who is here to answer any questions. And that was a product of a series of sessions held with all partner organisations and our Chief Financial Officer and representatives in Monmouthshire. The SOS Public Board has received NCC's full business case and due diligence response and can now assure the existing partner organisations that accepting a new partner is in line with its strategic aims to grow the business and does not introduce a level of risk that would cause failure of the SOS service to existing partners. And I think that's something that we spent a lot of time trying to make sure of. With the addition of the new partners, the SOS is able to further achieve economies of scale and realise savings through the equal share of strategic service management costs. Leader, this will add a considerable resource and resilience to the SOS and goes a long way to with cooperating on the collaboration agenda, as I said earlier. There are discussions now ongoing with Caerphilly, and we wait to see the outcome of them. And it's been clear for some time that the SOS is too small for the demands being expected of it, and this will go a long way towards dealing with that problem. As I said, Matt is here to answer any questions. So is Sean Hayward, if there's any from an MCC point of view. So with that, Leader, I'll hand back to you.
Thank you, Phil. I really do welcome this. You know, bringing, well, hopefully, all Gwent partners on board. You know, that's a really positive thing, and it's beneficial to all of us, I'm sure. And absolutely, as you alluded to, aligns totally with the emerging agenda, which we will be looking to move forward on, of a deeper working relationship with our neighbouring authorities. Indeed, the Cabinet Secretary for Local Government is joining us next week to talk to us as 5 leaders to understand where we are on that collaborative journey, and this is plays well to that that piece of work. So yeah, thanks for bringing this forward. Matt, is there anything you'll want to add at this point?
So I'm Matt Lewis, Chief Operating Officer for the SRS. I just want to add really that it's been through Torfaen Cabinet on Monday and was approved. It's been through Gwent OPCC and signed off, and it went through Blaenau Gwent's Cabinet on Wednesday. So this is the final Cabinet of the partners for it to go through. And then we've got a meeting in Newport mid next week to finalise what that means coming in. I described through the papers to the other cabinets the position for staff in Newport. I think an earlier decision and an ability to communicate this to staff in Newport will start to allay concerns for those staff pre-Christmas, which I think is important to us. The date of April 1st to bring staff across is significant from a finance perspective and from a staffing perspective, a budgeting. It lines up nicely with everything, but I guess the sooner we can start to tell staff what's happening, there's less concern about when it happens. It's the key thing is to let them know what's happening. And I guess hopefully on the back of the day we'll be able to do that with some certainty. So thank you very much.
Cabinet, anybody wish to add anything? No? Roger?
Thank you, Leader. It was interesting that Phil, if I've got it right, said that SRS at the moment is a bit too small to, for want of better words, be totally effective. And if it gets bigger, which it obviously will do if Newport comes in, we can hope that it solves all the problems. But is there, and I welcome that, is there a fallback, a plan B, if when Newport gets there, we suddenly realise that we've overstretched? From what you've said so far, it doesn't sound like that, but it would be good to hear your reassurances.
I'm absolutely convinced. I must admit, we've been a long way down that road, asking exactly the same question. There's an awful lot of effort being put into making sure that that's not the case. I don't think anybody is in a position to say that we won't have little wrinkles along the way. I'm absolutely certain of that, but we do have the capacity to cope with that, and Matt and his team will be considerably strengthened by that. Is there anything you want to add to that, Matt?
Yeah, definitely. So we took a paper through the SRS Public Board which talked about how we would cope with that additional work coming in. So we're not reducing staff in Newport as part of the transfer in, so everybody who's there today will come across. There are some vacancies that come across as well, so we will fill those. We've tried to hold off, not create ourselves any problems, so we'll fill those when they come across. But we have taken a paper through the board which gives our board assurance of how we need to grow at different parts of the organisation as we bring in more partners. So we've got a timeline of when we would need to add those roles, and we've got the funding with which to bring them in as well. So as part of the Blaenau Gwent transfer in, we did have to expand some of the team lead and management roles. As part of this one, there will be 2 people coming in that will pick up responsibilities SRS-wide. So stop doing some of the things they're doing for Newport today, but pick up organisation-wide things. I think what that does, it has the capacity. We've given assurance to the board that we know what that is, how we introduce it. We introduced Blaenau Gwent. There were no service level disruptions, no problems with anything. As Councillor Murphy mentioned, you'll always get the little wrinkles and the little problems as you work your way through with different bits and pieces, but in the main, service levels haven't dropped. We haven't missed any deadlines on projects as a result of Blaenau Gwent coming in, and we'd fully expect the same thing to happen with Newport. But it will be monitored through performance boards in the same way we did with Blaenau Gwent.
Thank you, Matt. Simon?
Yeah, just a couple of questions really. I was one of the members, as you know, I think most of us were when we signed into this at the start. We had a massive contribution from this council on capital, and I think the revenue side of it as well is quite a lot of money per annum is going into SRS. I know from last week or last cabinet meeting we made another significant investment into IT. I suppose this is probably where it's going as well up there. What I can't understand is where we had Blaenau Gwent come on board and we have now Newport looking to come on board, and you did say Caerphilly. Should this mean that our investment that we put in per annum should be reducing because more people are in there, or is it accelerating it that we have to be putting more investment into it? Because I just want to know what the balance is on this, because the more in there means more work's to be done, more investment. Now that's only because we've had 2 more partners come on board. If we'd have stayed status quo, perhaps we wouldn't have needed that, even though it was overcapacity. The overcapacity wasn't our problem. That was how it was built. It's took 5 years now, nearly, to bring another 2 partners in. But our contribution hasn't decreased. It's just rising and rising and rising. I thought you may have decreased with bringing more people in. Anyway, there you go. That's my question.
I'll bring the officers in, but our actual budget for the service we get from the SRS has been decreasing steadily. I don't know where you've got that from, but perhaps Sean or Matt would like to pick that up. Decreasing. Substantially decreasing. Decreasing. Substantially.
Can I invite officers then to pick up some of that? So let's get some clarity around the budget position and the efficiencies we're gaining out of the SRS.
If you were comparing the investment that we asked for last week, that was an investment in Monmouthshire's capability to make the workforce and our processes more digital. That's separate from the SRS investment, which has been decreasing gradually over the period, well, over the last few years. So you need really to separate the two.
It was just comments that were made last week that anyway, okay. I'll look at it.
No. We were talking very specific about taking forward Monmouth's digital journey, and that's separate from the SRS. Yeah. Okay. Right. So the recommendations then we have before us just the one, that each partner cabinet agrees to Newport City Council joining the SRS as a partner, realising benefits for both the SRS and for each partner organisation. We're all in favour of that, I'm sure. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, Matt. Okay, we'll move on to review the authority's fees and charges for inclusion in the 2017-18 budget.
Yes, thank you, Leader. And these are the schedules of proposals taken into account in the budget calculations. And I invite questions. It's quite a detailed list. However, before I do that, there is an issue regarding car parking charges. This will have to be removed as there will be no increase this year and will in any event be subject of a separate report. But as I said, Leader, the proposals are in here. They are proposed for inclusion within the 17-18 budget, and will no doubt do the round of the scrutiny committees.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Phil. I mean, this and the following reports will be going through all the select committees for significant interrogation, I'm sure, over the coming months. But yeah, thank you, and thank you for clarifying the issue on car parking. That shouldn't have been in the report. So, colleagues, anything to wish to add? It's pretty straightforward. Roger?
No, thank you, Leader. We'll look at it in scrutiny, as you say.
Okay, and like we say, that we expected this will be looked at in depth within the scrutiny round. So the recommendations there then at 2.1 are that the proposed fees and charges for 17-18 identified for each type of chargeable service made as outlined in Appendix 1 be adopted, that the increase in charges takes effect at a date no later than the 1st of April 2017, with any pressures resulting from increasing taking place after this date to be managed by chief officers within their respective budgets, and 2.3 that the chief officers effectively manage the budget pressures highlighted by services, not increasing charges in line with a 2.5% assumed increase in the 17-21 medium-term financial plan, and consideration should also be given to the cost effectiveness and administrative costs that result from implementing small increases to existing charges. And I think what Phil said about, we haven't got an additional recommendation. Well, we're recommending that the car parking charges comes out. It shouldn't be in there. There won't be increases on car park charges. Okay, so that's very clear. Oh, sorry, Joy, you want to clarify something?
I just think, just to pick up that point, you probably need to change recommendation 2.1 to say after be adopted with the exception of the increase in car park charges, just to make it absolutely clear.
Okay, can we add what Joy said then to the recommendation in 2.1, which covers the car park charging, which will be coming out? Okay, so with that amendment, all in favour of that recommendation? Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, move on to really important telephone call. On to important draft budget proposals for 2017-18 for consultation. Phil.
Yes, thank you, Leader. And clearly the purpose of this report is to provide detailed draft proposals, I stress draft proposals on the budget savings required to meet the gap between available resources and the need for spend in 17-18, and this is going out to consultation. So we will be considering the 17-18 budget within the context of the 4-year medium-term financial plan and the emergence of priorities to guide forward activities through future Monmouthshire, which, as we all know, is the exercise being carried out to try and work out where we're going and how on earth we're going to get there. Cabinet received a report on the medium-term financial plan and budget process in November, and included in that were builder assumptions, and they're set out in 3.2, and they'll be quite familiar, I'm sure, to members who've been following all of this. So the above assumptions led to a gap of 2.5 million in 17-18, rising to a gap of 10.5 million over the medium term. The work on pressures has highlighted that a number of significant pressures need to be taken into account in next year's budget, most notable in social care, where changes implemented by Welsh Government in relation to caps on charging for care and capital threshold limits, and the impact of the national living wage increase on care contracts has combined to generate a £2 million pressure in next year's budget. Within 3.4, it can be seen where the various pressures are, and they're set out by section there. and this is quite clear, I'm sure. So after several years of taking a significant resource out of the budget, the means of achieving further savings has become increasingly more challenging. The work on future Monmouthshire has meant some changes to the budget processes for 17-18. But across the board, all service areas were asked to consider how their services would look within a range of reductions available to them, and over 240 proposals were highlighted through this work. All those proposals have been considered and tested through a process of internal and external independent challenge. And the external challenge was also undertaken to provide a high-level independent view and challenge of the 17-18 budget pro formas. A summary of all those proposals are shown in the table, and there's a more detailed analysis in the appendices 2 and 3. 310 gives an overall summary of how this was categorised and is well worth looking at. So the budget proposals contained in this report have sought to ensure key outcomes and priorities can be continued to be pursued as far as possible within a restricting resource base. This does not, however, mean that these areas will not contribute to meeting the financial challenges. So, Leader, this will go out to scrutiny in January and external consultation, excuse me, and will also, that will also be carried out. It's a detailed report and responses will be welcomed. However, I must stress that Cabinet will only be able to consider responses up to the 31st of January to enable proper evaluation to be carried out. I'm stressing that because we have had a situation in the past where certain members didn't pick up on that, and that gave us a bit of a problem. So I'll repeat it again. It's in the report. It's not just me saying. We will only be able to carry out proper due consideration of alternative proposals provided we get them by the 31st of January. It will be noted that a gap remains at present of 243,000 and officers continue to work on that. So, Leader, I can finish by thanking officers for the considerable amount of work that's been done so far on this. It's been a Herculean task under very difficult circumstances. But as I said, this is going out to scrutiny now, and the main sessions will be carried out through January.
And thank you, Phil. Can I add my thanks to everybody who's worked so hard on this, as you do every year. And it's been challenging. Every year is challenging. You know, as you've alluded to, really, really tough set of proposals to come forward again. But I'm pleased that we've managed to minimise the impact, we believe, on public services through these set of proposals, and we've aligned them to our priorities of education, protecting the vulnerable, and maintaining locally accessible services and enterprise. You know, it's great that we are seeing, even in these difficult times, that commitment continued of growth in social care budgets. That school funding is still prioritised with being maintained at last year's cash levels, which is really difficult when you're seeing you know, such pressures come in many other areas. And that continued commitment, we believe, is so important to the foundation living wage. And let's just be clear, that is not just the basic living wage, this is a foundation living wage. This is a significantly higher level. So we think that's absolutely appropriate. As you mentioned earlier, there will be no car parking charges this year, and local services will be maintained. And as we know, there are lots of work going on in finding the best ways of providing those services going forward to make the efficiencies we need to sustain them going forward. And you know, so a really as good a message as we could in these difficult times, but we're still a significant amount of money to take out. And whilst we have, we are thankful that our budget this year is basically flatlined also, we know we're still right at the bottom of the heap, actually dropped now below £1,000 per capita to deliver services. such a significantly, significant drop really in comparison with many of our neighbouring authorities. But we won't bemoan that situation. We'll find ways to work through it, and that's why it's so important. That work that is happening on Future Monmouthshire is so crucial to identify that sustainable way forward to provide these services in a way we wish to going forward. So thank you, officers, and Phil, can I thank you personally for your leadership as always in bringing forward these proposals for consultation, and no doubt what you're going to be doing over the next weeks and months in helping people understand deeper what it might mean to them. So, colleagues, can I invite anybody who wishes to come in at this point?
We all know, working within the council, the pressures that we've got, but I think sometimes residents don't understand, and this year particularly, I've had several people come up to me and say, we understand that you're having the same amount of money from the Welsh Government as you had last year, so there won't be any problems will there? They do not honestly recognise the pressures that we've got. So it's just a word really that we know what's going on, but very often our residents think things must be getting better.
Okay, I'm going to Roger.
Thank you, Leader. As you say, once again, going out for consultation, and I note the particular discourse about the education budget staying the same, which it has done for a few years now, which means, as Bob has just indicated, that it's a decline no matter how we look at it. So as long as people realise that flatlining means with inflation, the schools won't be getting the same amount as last year. I also note what Phil says about the deadline, and you're probably going to be disappointed again, Phil. It's happened every time I've been here since 2004, but you never know. As I said, consultation, and we'll do our best to be as constructive as we possibly can.
I thank you for that, Roger, and we do welcome that constructive challenges. Collectively, as a council, we bring these things forward in the end, and we move them, and they can only really get to the right place through that deep discussion. So, Simon?
Yes, thank you, Leader. And just echoing what Roger's just said, everything's a challenge nowadays, whether it's catching a bus or getting your mobile phone to work. So, I mean, this budget is not going to be easy to offset, and I'm sure the 16-17 phase that we're still in is going to have to come out on a zero, or as near as we can get to it, which will probably help towards offsetting some of these problems that we're going to come up against. So I'd like to thank the officers for bringing their recommendations to the Cabinet, and look forward to going through the recommendations, and hopefully all together we can try and deliver for 17-18.
Thank you. Simon. Okay, right, then we'll, as we know, we're on that journey of consultation again, so we will be having those deeper conversations when they come back to Cabinet and Council in due course, and I'm within the select committees, and I'm sure Cabinet members will be making themselves available at those various select committees as needs be. So the recommendations then in 2.1 are that the Cabinet approves the release of the draft budget proposals for 2017-18 for consultation purposes, and that Cabinet approves that the consultation period and opportunity to present alternative proposals that have been equality impact assessed ends on the 31st of January 2017, and finally that Cabinet agrees to continue to work on the areas required to balance the 2017-18 budget and the medium-term financial plan through those opportunities identified in the Emerging Future Monmouthshire's programme. All in favour of those recommendations? Thank you very much. And on to the last budget paper, Capital. Phil.
Yes, thank you, Leader. And there's not much I can say about this. It's the capital version of the consultation process that we were just talking about with regard to the revenue. It's as detailed as it always is, provides a vast amount of information. Again, we'll be going through the scrutiny rounds. So I invite questions, Leader.
Yeah, thank you. Again, Phil, there's always a lot of work. Capital budget is so important because it puts in that infrastructure we so desperately need and our communities need, and that's why I'm really pleased to see such fantastic investment going into our schools. And anybody who's been to Caldecott lately will see what 45 million pounds worth of investment is starting to look like, and it's fantastic. And I spent yesterday afternoon with Councillor Hackett-Payne in Monmouth Comp to see the work that's moving there out the ground. Fantastic again. I mean, that's a commitment by the whole council from all political parties, I have to say. And that's been the case since 2001 when we started, and I think that's a massive something the council should be recognised for. So, you know, that's some really positive stuff. We've still got the commitment to invest further capital on the likes of the hub in Abergavenny, which is a really important step forward because we've seen how they're operating in the other areas and how well received and efficient they are. So that's you know, really important, and I know colleagues will want to reflect further on things like DFGs as well, which is another important area which we want to be looking at. So colleagues, can I open that, Jeff?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Yes, it's important that we just have a quick, I'd like to make a quick comment regarding the Disabled Facilities Grant. I mean, for me, it's very important cohort of our members in our community that this particular grant provides for. I'm very mindful that for quite some time that we've been doing the best we can with the limited resources that we have to make the best of. But certainly the case is made that the more that we can do for this particular category of individuals really makes a difference, not only in the quality of their lives, but also in terms of resource. Keeping people at home with a good quality of life is as important as it gets. So for me, I'm delighted that we're going to be doing, with colleagues, looking ways to do more for the Disabled Facilities Grant for 2017-18. That said, we're going to be getting a report to Cabinet in January that will start to articulate what that looks like for the next financial year. But I'm very pleased to say that what we're also going to be doing also in that report is looking to see whether or not we can do within year some work and some resource release in order to ensure very quickly that these very vulnerable people and that their needs can be addressed. So I'm very pleased that this is on the list and that there will be that we're able to look at this very quickly. Thank you, Leader.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. I really welcome that update. Anybody else, colleagues? Anything else on capital? No, Roger.
Thank you, Leader. As Phil says, there's an awful lot in here for us to chew over, and so we're going to be busy on scrutiny. I welcome what Jeff has just said, because it's got to be a win-win situation if we can get these grants on a more of a sensible basis than we have at the moment. And I also look forward to getting a lot more information on the hub in Abergavenny. There's lots of mutterings, when's it going to happen, etc., etc. So we look forward to that progressing rapidly. Thank you, Leader.
Simon?
Thank you, Leader. I'd just like to ask a question on the basis of the projects that we have in hand on the capital. I know there's some exciting times with the City deal. We've got the Circuit of Wales still rumbling along there, whatever happens there. I'd just like to ask a question on the SIL, because I think that's going to play an important part in the next, I'd say probably the next couple of years, on perhaps how we can deliver some of the projects for infrastructure. We have an LDP which is running there as well, which we've got to really try and start to deliver now in the next couple of years. And I noticed the IT reserve, going back to last week's report, is running really low there, and that means then it says in the report we're going to have to pay for itself, which as we all said last week, it's the way we've got to go, and it's something that we've got to look to the future. Without that, will have invested in a lot of money in something that we haven't took a business case forward on, and I think that's important that we look at that. And my last one is the 21st century schools. It's great, brilliant, but we need to be looking at this next tranche of this, because there are rumblings out there that the delivery of LDPs and the next phase, have we actually got enough quality schools out there for the children and the next generation of Monmouthshire, which is going to be there. And I think it's the numbers game, leader. I think we need to start that work pretty soon.
Okay, so who would like to talk to SIL? Perhaps Kelly.
Yeah, thank you, Leader, and thanks to Councillor House. I think there's some really good points there. We do have a full implementation schedule for SIL. We'll be bringing that forward shortly now when we've completed the review work that we need to do under the auspices of the current local development plan. And I think is a point really well made. We've got to make sure that we can really leverage that potential, especially in the context of things like a city deal, where there should be some major infrastructure investments. And I think the opportunity there is, as we move into a partial review of our local development plan, and in particular our housing sites, we're able to bring all of those things together at the same time, so we get maximum strategic opportunity. So whether that's done solely at a local level or in the context of an emerging strategic direction around planning and land use, that will be really, really important. But our timescale for SIL has now moved to September of next year, which I think is a good thing, because it will align better with our review of the local development plan. And as I say, bring opportunities to the fore at the same time.
And Liz, would you like to talk to 21st Century Schools?
Thank you very much, Leader. I was just going to say that work is very much ongoing as with Welsh Government about Ban B. But before we actually get there, because it will be a good few years in coming as such, we need to resurrect the educational strategic review and look at things such as population, and we've always been very good in the past at projecting numbers for future schools. We are in the county, though, always increasing elderly population and decreasing children. So even with new developments coming on board, we still have less children in the county per year than we do elderly people. But all that work needs to be done, but it is very much ongoing at the moment. And we are at the moment on a 4 secondary school strategy, and we need to update that through our strategic review, looking at all the things that you've mentioned. So very much ongoing.
Okay, and it's fair to say we're still carrying quite a lot of surplus places in primary level across the county, and that's always seemed to be the case, and slightly higher levels of surplus places in the north of the county compared with the south, and so yeah, it's taking all those things into the mix. Okay, thanks for that, Liz, and thank you everybody for your input on that point. Again, as we know, this is going out to consultation. So the recommendations then are in one, that the Cabinet issues its draft capital budget proposals for consultation purposes as set out and referred to in Appendix 2, and that Cabinet confirms a capital strategy which seeks to prioritise the Council's future schools programme and other commitments, whilst also continuing to finance minimum core capital programme, and that we recognise the risks associated with the approach, and that Cabinet reviews the priorities in the capital programme in light of the issues raised in 3.7 and other demands for capital resources, and that Cabinet reaffirms the principle that new schemes can only be added to the programme if the business case demonstrates that they are self-financing, or the scheme is deemed a higher priority than current schemes in the programme and therefore displaces it, and that the Cabinet agrees to maximise the use of capital receipts when received to fund the capital programme, therefore reducing the need to borrow and or set aside to repay debt as outlined in 3.10 of the report. And finally, that Cabinet agrees to the sale of the assets in accordance with the asset management plan and identified in the exempt background papers in order to support the capital programme, and that once agreed, no further options are considered for these assets. So all in favour of those recommendations? Okay, thank you very much. And that brings us to the end of this meeting. And can I just say thank you for all of your input through 2016, all of your work. Especially officers, take those messages of thanks back to all of your colleagues who I know are under significant pressure, and we recognise the good work everybody's done. And we look forward to next year, and I think it's going to be an exciting and positive year. So can I just wish you all a very, very happy Christmas and a really prosperous new year. Thank you.